What's going on, everyone? My name is Liam DeBoer. I'm here with ET Transport, and today we're going to take a look at exactly what is going on with the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa. Typically on this channel, we do informational style videos about the world of trucking, which, as you can imagine, isn't much of a political arena. However, I've seen a lot of mischaracterizations of this movement, and I've asked ET to give me a shot at clearing the air. So here we are. And I'd like to quickly state that these are solely my views and takes. Now that I've got that out of the way, the corporate media has been propagating the notion that this is a white nationalist movement trying to Trojan horse racism through a protest about freedom. And unfortunately, in the court of public opinion, you're guilty until proven innocent. So I figured we'll go through each one of these claims about Nazism, stifling of Indigenous voices, stealing from the homeless, and defamation of statues to see whether or not these are valid representations of the movement. So let's get into it. When this convoy first got underway, Justin Trudeau labeled the movement a fringe minority.
The small fringe minority.
And before we tackle the 1984 Freudian slip of a notion that a leader of a democratic nation gets to decide what views are acceptable and unacceptable, let's first see how Justin responded to the minority arriving in Ottawa. Actually, never mind, we can't. Because despite being turbo-boosted, double-vaxxed, and the type of person who wouldn't dare come into contact with a disgusting and immoral unvaxxed social leper, he came down with a timely asymptomatic case of COVID-19 and couldn't field reporter questions because, well, of course, he couldn't put all their lives at risk. After reappearing just in time for Groundhog's Day to signal 6 more weeks of flattening the curve, our leader issued this statement.
I know you're wondering about what you saw in our capital city this weekend. Freedom of expression, assembly, and association are cornerstones of democracy, but Nazi symbolism, racist imagery, and desecration of war memorials are not. Over the past few days, Canadians were shocked and frankly disgusted by the behavior displayed by some people protesting in our nation's capital.
So let's go through these bold accusations one by one. First, let's tackle the most important claim, Nazism. There's no denying the fact that both the Confederate and Nazi flag have found their way into the midst of thousands of flags displaying love for Canada and the freedom it's supposed to provide. However, like anyone who threw a high school party that everyone ended up hearing about knows, there will always be assholes who show up uninvited. Like when the Free Palestine movement had a bunch of people displaying Nazi symbolism and chanting anti-Semitic remarks. But I think what's important is judging the character of a movement based on how it reacts when hatred shows up on the scene, not in its ability to have the corporate media pretend it doesn't exist. So how did these supposed white nationalists act when white nationalists showed up to the party?
Now he's going, now he's gone. We called him out, he knows. He's gonna hold his head in shame now.
In regards to the Nazi flag, while our Prime Minister and media, which is heavily tax funded by the way,
you sometimes hear about liberal bias in the media these days, how they're constantly letting our government off the hook for no good reason. Frankly, I think that's insulting. It's clear that they let us off the hook for a very good reason, because we paid them $600 million.
Are using this flag to slander the entire movement, the founder of the True North Centre, Candace Malcolm, has teamed up with the people of the convoy and together have issued a $7,000 reward for anyone who can provide the police with information about this masked, hate-fueled citizen. Next up on the list of accusations is the stifling of Indigenous voices. Well, first off, I just have to say I found this one extremely confusing after seeing multiple Indigenous communities singing and dancing in support of the convoy. And those who were actually able to make it to the rally in person started leading drum circles and chants. It was so beautiful that even all those hateful white nationalists participated in the singing and dancing. While the support may sound like it's going in one direction, the truth is much more wholesome. The Freedom Convoy decided to share the world spotlight and have started a GoFundMe for clean water initiatives in Indigenous communities and are asking that supporters of the convoy also support this fundraiser, which has pulled in an impressive $750,000 in just 1 week's time. Alright, what's next? Claims of protesters stealing food from the homeless seems like a good one. Now, unfortunately, this did happen, but not quite as the headlines made it seem. While first reading, I imagined protesters quite literally robbing homeless people, but after looking into it further, a few protesters tried to impolitely sneak their way into a homeless shelter to grab a plate. And I think we can all agree that if you're capable of buying food, eating at a homeless shelter is just plain stupid. But let's once again look at how the supposed white nationalists responded. After this one small group acted with nothing but their own interests in mind, the Freedom Convoy notified the drivers and people of the movement, who responded by feeding the homeless, barbecuing for free, and leaving free food and water stations all around the city. So it would seem yet again that the actions of a few bad actors do not accurately represent the actions of the movement. Although that didn't stop the media and our leader, who of course is acting solely with the people's interest in mind, from alluding that protesters on large are defacing war memorials and statues. Yet again, this was an occurrence, but by no means has it been a theme of what's been going on in Ottawa. The reality of the situation is that after some people who belong in a corner with a dunce cap on started dressing statues with "No More Mandates" signs, the Freedom Convoy responded by literally shining, sans spit, those exact statues, many others, and leaving flowers at the steps of war memorials. So, given all of this, how does our provincial leader, Doug Ford, respond to this protest?
My message right from the beginning of this pandemic, when it came to the truckers, I appreciate everything they've done. I appreciate them bringing health supplies to hospitals, putting food on the grocery shelves. But there's three things I can't tolerate. Desecration of any war memorials or any memorials. Zero tolerance for that. What people have to do, and the flags are waving around, is disgusting in my opinion. Outside of the greatest flag in the world, the Canadian flag. God bless them for waving the Canadian flag. But the other thing is, folks, there's a million people that live in Ottawa. I hear you. I hear the protesters. The province hears the protesters. The country hears the protesters. Now it's time to let the people in Ottawa get back to their lives. These businesses that have been closed for a while now, the restaurants want to reopen. So, I get it. I hear you. But we have to let the people of Ottawa live their lives.
Now, for Ford to say he's heard the message that's driving the trucking convoy, which, let's be clear, is to lift all mandates and resume our lives, to tell a convoy which has been on the streets for less than a week that they are disrupting people's lives, while he's been personally responsible for enacting the most aggressive mandates and business closures in North America over the past 2 years, is at best complete cognitive dissonance and at worst deliberate gaslighting of the population. Now look, I'm perfectly willing to admit that if I were living in downtown Ottawa while the city is filled with honking trucks, yeah, I'd probably find it a slight nuisance. However, I think any of those who are stating that truck horns are grounds to put their personal life before the well-being of a nation are extremely disrespectful to the people standing out in the cold day in and day out, quite literally trying to restore your access to the basic rights a Canadian is granted at birth. You can disagree with the people involved in this movement or myself all you want. It's not my place to say what views are acceptable and unacceptable, something our leader isn't capable of granting the citizenry the dignity of. However, I think it's time we all look inside ourselves and ask, is this potentially the greatest opportunity in recent history for the citizens of Canada to unite in a common goal? There isn't a single community that hasn't been affected negatively by these lockdowns and mandates. Even all the experts we've been told to blindly listen to are now admitting that lockdowns cause more harm than good. And the countries which held hands with Canada in aggressive overreach, such as the UK, Israel, and many Scandinavian countries, are dropping mandates and vaccine passports altogether. So I beg and plead, instead of slandering the truckers, let's focus the conversation on the leaders of this country, who haven't sent a single representative to meet with the Freedom Convoy and can quite literally end this with a single press announcement. Well, that's all from me, folks. I hope I brought some light to the confusion around the narrative of this protest. We'd love to hear what you think. Will this protest prove successful against a stubborn government? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And just remember, it's one thing to point frustrations towards those in charge, which is totally valid and I participate in quite often. However, it's another to create more divides by drawing we and them lines in the sand between citizens. This truly should be a bipartisan movement, one that everyone can rally around if it's discussed properly. So let's not give any fuel to those who are trying to turn us on one another. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.